Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mentor Project's Optimizing Your Success Show, where we bring high achievers and really get inside their mind and get inside their story. I'm Dr. Ruth Gotian. I study extreme high achievers, such as today's guest, who is actually featured in my book, The Success Factor. Before we get to introducing our special guest, we have a smaller than usual panel as things have opened up and people are traveling again. We have our photographer and the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Photo Wings, Suzie Katz. And we have our favorite physician and scientist, Dr. Bruce Y. Lee, who's also a journalist. I hope you're checking out his Forbes articles, a computer modeler, and avocado lover. Now, today, our special guest, I mentioned he's one of the Olympic champions who's featured in the book, The Success Factor. He has an incredible story. He actually went to 3 Olympics, came back with 3 medals, has a story, started in the Netherlands, is now in the United States. I was actually introduced to him by the CEO of the Mentor Project, Dr. Debbie Heiser, who was his student at one point. And I am talking about today's special guest, Michiel Bartman, who is originally from the Netherlands. Now he's in the United States. He coaches the Temple University women's rowing team, but he has an incredible story how a guy who started playing soccer went under duress to rowing because his parents forced him, had to take a pause to go to the military, eventually made it all the way to not 1, not 2, but 3 Olympic Games. And now he's here mentoring and coaching the next generation of rowers. Michiel, it is so great to have you and to chat with you again. I'm so excited for this.
Well, I'm excited too. Thank you for having me and having this opportunity. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Now, why don't you tell everyone, as I said, we were introduced by Debbie Heiser, who was your rowing student when you were on Long Island. But why don't you take us back to the Netherlands of how you actually got started rowing and how did we go from there to the Olympics? Tell us the story.
I hope I can squeeze it in enough time that we have. As every Dutch kid, you play soccer. That's the most popular sport in the Netherlands, and I did that for several years. And I was about, I think 11, 12 years old. Through some circumstances that my parents decided that soccer was not the game for me anymore. So with my friend at the time, we were looking at different sports, and he decided to play field hockey. Field hockey in the Netherlands and in Europe is actually played by men as well, and a very popular sport. I didn't want to run after a ball anymore, so I asked my parents, "Okay, what else is out there?" And my mom pointed me to rowing. Not much later on, really like 20 years later, she told me that she once wanted to row, but she couldn't because of how the things were at the time. But she brought me to a club close by, started to learn to row. I had a little bit of I call a mishap in rowing.
What was that?
Well, I didn't flip, which is one of the first things that novice rowers do. So, you're rowing and you make a bad stroke and then you just flip the boat and you get wet. I was a little bit, in between that. I was getting into the boat and I was a small boy, and those boats are fairly large. And I had to reach over to close what we call the oar lock. So that's where the oar is in place and locked, but you have to lock it. And I had to reach over, and I leaned too far over, and the gate wasn't open yet. Wasn't closed yet, sorry. It was still open, and I went in. And I got out of the water, soaking wet, went back to my parents, and I said, okay, I'm done with rowing. I don't want to do this anymore. But then they said, well, tough luck. You know, we paid the.
It's paid for.
It's paid for the year. So
By the way, that is parental guilt. That's how we get our kids to do things. Parental guilt. It's paid for.
So off I go, and that was basically it. Just learned to row. Actually, took a gap year there. I played tennis, and then I got back, and then actually started to coach for the very first time. So I was 18 years old, probably.
Wow.
Started coaching kids who were like 14, 15, 16. Did that
not much younger than you.
No, but we did it with two other teammates, former teammates of mine, who I rowed with, and it was actually consuming a lot more time than the actual practice that we typically had. But we made it fun, and we had like coaches meetings at a bar, and
well, Michiel, how did you know that you were good at rowing? You know, from that awkward entrance to you became a champion pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I when I was a junior, I got to the top level of junior rowing pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was invited to the selection of the junior national team. Wow. But I was tall and lanky, and they wanted to have beefier guys. So I was I didn't make it, which was quite a disappointment. But you know, nothing more than that. And when I finished my military service, I knew that I wanted to go to college and row again. And I wanted to row for a particular club in Amsterdam called Neerhuis.
Well, wait, hold on one second before we get to that, because actually the piece that we talk about, that I write about in the success factor with your story, is actually your time in the military, where you wanted to continue rowing, but the way the military day was happening, you just couldn't. There was no time to do it, but you actually kept up your physical training.
Yes. Yeah.
By going to the gym. So you were in the right mind and physical shape to continue as soon as the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah. I was in the middle of nowhere. Our base was where I was stationed, was like there was no water in sight, not for me to row on. So the only option for me was to stay in shape by running and lifting. And I did my lifts during my lunch breaks. And I met a fantastic sergeant there, where we had great conversations about life and also about pursuing opportunities. And I did my running after, say, you know, after the day was over. But it was a great time, and I learned a lot, and I think that I definitely carried over a lot of things that I learned in the Army to my training discipline and structuring. But it was a time where I thought, well, I want to, if I show up to that club, I want to be in shape, and I want to present myself in the best way possible. So yeah, I just did it. Nobody was pushing me. There was no incentive for a crew or something. I didn't know anybody who I was training for, but it was just something that I thought was necessary in order to be ready for the next opportunity.
And that's what we talk about a lot, is you have a goal, and that goal can be far-fetched and it could be out of sight and out of mind. But every day there are things and there are action steps you could take in order to get yourself one step closer to the goal. So instead of complaining about there's no water around me, there's nothing I can do, you actually found something that you can do that helps you get into shape. So Michiel, how did we get now from the military to the Olympics?
So I went to college, and even there I took in my sophomore year a gap year because I was academically just too loaded to really continued training. I kind of also, again, stayed in shape. And in my senior year, in my junior year, I was part of a project. It was kind of like we were in a fast eight that got national attention, and they were looking at us as the future for Olympic rowing in the Netherlands. And it was actually a disaster for me. Every single time, and there were, I think, probably 10 selection moments in that year. Each time I was selected out. I didn't make it one single time. And so when the final selection came up.
So you applied 10 times.
Oh, it was the amount of tears.
Wow. But you didn't give up.
And frustration. And no, I wanted to give up so many times. But
you didn't.
I didn't. I at the time, I had a girlfriend who was really supportive and helped me out a lot. But there were also other people who helped me out. And the biggest one was actually the coach of my freshman year in college, who saw that I and other guys who he coached prior to that project struggle. So he came up with a plan. So in my senior year, we hopped in a 4. And he said, I have a 3-year plan. First year is gain international experience. Second year, go to the World Championships. Third year, win a medal at the World Championships. And very clear, precise goals.
Measurable.
We in my senior year, when I also had to deal with the sickness of my dad, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and we didn't know, especially in that first half year, if he was going to make it. So going back and forth to home or the hospital to say okay, this is the time to say goodbye. And so I was graduating, doing my exams. I had to work. I trained. We traveled to a lot of international regattas. But in that year, 92, we were racing against crews who were going to the Olympics of Barcelona. And we were not that far off. And at that point, as a boat, we kind of made the commitment to say well, if we are a student crew and we are that close to other boats that are already going to the Olympics, if we step up our training, then why not?
it was in sight. It was in sight.
Yep. And so we started training harder. We started training as a normal collegiate year. You're practicing and training in the fall, and you have your practices and races in the spring, and then during the summer you have a big gap. So a lot of students take time off, but we didn't. And we noticed right away the progression that we were making. It was huge, and so that gave us even more motivation. And so the following year, we went to our first World Championship. We actually won a bronze medal at the regatta prior to the World Championship, which is sometimes considered even a more competitive tournament than the World Championship itself. And that turned out a little bit of a deception because we didn't make the final. And the whole week we were down. We were really upset that we didn't make the final, and so our coach.
How'd you get out of that funk?
Well, so our coach, he's a psychologist, and he knew exactly how to get us back in. And basically, what he said was that I know that you're upset. I know that this is not the result that you came for, but you still have the chance to win what we call the B final. So that's for places 7 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also row a fast time and compare that to the times that are rowed in the A final, which is the race I think was before us. So I know that still going up, and during our warm up and our preparation at the starting line, I was still not in it. But when I was there at the start, I just flipped the switch, and I just didn't think really about like my technique. I thought I'm just going, and we had a great race against the United States, and we won that B final, so we placed 7th overall.
Wow.
And our time was basically the 4th fastest of those 12 boats that just raced within several minutes from each other. So we were, after, say, winning that B final, we were content with what we did, even though we didn't win a medal, but it definitely gave us hope for the following year. And so we had our World Championship in Indianapolis, 94. And we came in as a good crew, not certain about a championship medal, but definitely able to get one. On
Did
Saturday,
that qualify you for the Olympics?
No, that would be the following year.
Mhm.
So the way it goes is that in the year before the Olympics, you qualify the boat, not the rowers, but the boat for the IOC and for the Olympics. But yeah, that final was so crazy because our race was postponed, and we had to get up the next day at 4 a.m. and get ready for an 8 a.m. final.
Oh, wow.
Halfway through, we were last, so in 6th place. And I thought, it doesn't get any worse than this. So again, I flipped a switch, and together with the US, it seems like, just that maybe that's why I'm in the US. I don't know. But the US was 5th, and we both started charging. And we weren't able to catch the Romanian crew. But the US finished 2nd, a couple of tenths after the Romanian crew, and we finished a couple seconds.
Wow.
A couple tenths. So the first 3 finishers were within a second.
Wow.
Over a distance of 2 kilometers. So that's
Wow.
over, like, what is it, 1.6 miles or so.
That sounds like what movies are made of.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. So, and then our boat was to put together with the 8 to get, say, the 8 ready for the Olympics of 96. And
that was your first Olympics in 96.
That was my first Olympics.
In Atlanta.
Yep. That was, so in 95, I gained a seat in the 8. We finished 2nd at the World Championship, so we qualified the boat for the Olympics. And our coach, we were seasoned rowers. We had a lot of experience. I was one of the younger guys in the boat. We had guys who already went to like 2 or 3 Olympics before and even won medals. Our coach had a clear plan of like how he wanted to get us fit. And we trained different. We had not an exceptional different training schedule, but we did a lot of mileage. There are days that we did 30 miles of rowing.
Oh, wow.
And
I'm trying to get to 10,000 steps, and you're rowing 30,000.
Yeah. No, if I
miles.
sometimes look back at that schedule and I think like how I was able to do that, I don't know, but you just did it.
Wow.
But that year we were undefeated. Every race we won with like a length which is like 55 feet or more.
Wow.
We set course records. We set world best time, and
wow.
so we went to the Olympics pretty confident. And the only thing that we wanted to give our opponents was like, say, second medal or silver medal. That's
So you had your eye on the prize of that gold medal.
yeah.
And so how'd you do?
So I would say that our final race, our Olympic gold medal race, wasn't even our best race. But
rough life, Michiel.
Yeah, I know. and to be honest, and I just also said it to one of my rowers in prep for a race, is that of the first kilometer of the race, so first half of the race, I don't know anything. I heard, say, the beep of the start, and not until our coxswain said, the Germans who were leading, like with a half a boat length, our coxswain said, "Germans are fading, we go now." And that's when I got back into the race. And
wow.
We knew, and that's also what we said the night before our boat meeting, is that we can expect that in the first half, somebody, or maybe another crew, two crews, that they go out in front and see if they can get into our heads and see if they can rattle us. So that happens. The Germans, who are not like, they're great rowers, very, very legit crew who had won gold medals at World Championships and Olympic Games before. But our coach said, like, nobody's faster than us in the second kilometer. Nobody. So that was our trust. We knew that if we just did our own thing, was that, like, we would, no matter what the difference at the finish line would be, but we knew that nobody was going to be faster or beating us in the second kilometer. So
this really sounds like it's obviously very physical, but it's also very mental, right? You have to be in the right headspace for it.
Yeah.
And your team has to work as one. Everyone has to be together on this.
Well, so I consider rowing the ultimate team sport for several reasons. You can't see each other's faces.
That must be so hard. You're staring at everyone's back.
Yes, you're staring at somebody's back. You don't talk in a boat, and there are no. Once you shove off for the final, you can't switch anybody anymore. Like with other sports, like volleyball, basketball.
Right. You rotate or whatever.
You rotate, right? If somebody's underperforming, is not in the game, then you can take that person out.
So here the whole team has to rally to get that person in the game.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So I know people really, really want to see the special something that you have to show us. And then we have a bunch of questions for you. So Michiel, you've been in 3 Olympics. You have a total of 3 medals.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear you have something for show and tell.
Yes. So today I brought, say, my first medal, which is this one.
Show it up close. Oh my God, it's so shiny.
So
wow.
Once I pull out the other ones, I can tell you a little bit of story about, say, the front and the back. But here you can see it's from Atlanta.
Wow.
And then it's also specialized because I don't know if you can read that, but there's an inscription.
What does it say?
It says men's 8.
Oh, wow. So for the actual sport.
So every medal is kind of like personalized. Because also here you can see on the bottom, you can see a rower.
Wow.
And so if you would ever lose the medal, then it's very easy to track it back. And that's the same for every other sport. So
that's assuming somebody turns it in.
Yeah. But who in my mind is like, who wants to own a gold medal that you didn't deserve, an Olympic gold medal?
I
that
spoke to
you
an
can.
Olympian who had his stolen, but that's a whole other story.
No, yeah, but
What
oh
are you
no,
gonna do with it?
I know that they're a very it's a very wanted object, but just
You got
uh,
to earn it, right?
to look at it and knowing that you didn't put the years in of hard work, um,
Yeah.
and consider it yours, that wouldn't. I can't grasp that. I can,
I can't either.
you know. So yeah, after winning this gold medal, I thought, okay, this is fun. Um, I I want to do this again, and that's how Olympians start to think. It's not like,
It's addictive.
well, but it's also, you're not thinking about a 1 year project. You're thinking about a 4 year project, and you see the years between the Olympics as the stepping goal towards the Olympics. So even though, like, it's great already for an athlete to go to a world championship or medal even at a world championship, but Olympians think like, well, I need those years to prep. So that's kind of like training material. And so yeah, I thought 96 is 100 years after the modern Olympics started again in 1896 in Paris. So I thought, okay, that is Centennial Games, a pretty special Olympic Games, and then you had the Millennium Games in Sydney, 2000.
Yeah.
And I thought that
Right.
that was
Let's see that medal.
that's this one.
I love that there's multiples.
So it says here on the ribbon, Sydney 2000.
Uh-huh.
And then, as you can see, again, similar to the Olympic one, you see that the fronts are the same.
Love it.
And then the back of the medal is something you can specialize in. So you can make it
Wow.
really geared towards your Olympic Games. So as you can see on the one from
Oh,
Sydney,
there's your quad. Yeah.
and you see the Opera House.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So that's and then here is also engraved the event that I wanted in. So it says here on top, it says rowing, and then on the bottom it says the men's quadruple sculls.
Wow. All right. Let's see that last one.
So
Three.
then I thought I was done. I was 33 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
No money in rowing, so no big paychecks or something like that. And I had to start thinking, well, I have a life after this. So I thought it was a good moment to stop rowing. 2 Olympic medals, also in 2 different disciplines, in sculling and in sweep rowing, which is not done a lot in rowing. But my mind said, okay, I want to quit, but my feel said no. I wasn't done yet, and I was. Before I knew it, I was working. I was working as a computer consultant, and but soon I was back in the boat after a work day, and we got together with some of my former teammates, and we said, why don't we give it another try? We had like
one more time.
Well, so it actually now. We kind of said to each other, let's do another year.
Mm-hmm.
So we lost one guy. He really stopped rowing, and we looked for somebody else. And we had a great year. We won a World Cup race. We definitely were in contention for winning the World Championship. And I honestly thought that was going to be the year to do it. But again, we won a silver medal at the World Championships, and
so you were not done.
No, and then I realized, say that like the politics in the sport started to play too much of a role, and I didn't necessarily want to be part of it. I just enjoyed, say, the training, being with others, having a common goal, traveling the world, meeting new people. And so in 2003, we had, as a men's rowing team for the Netherlands, we had quite a disastrous year, because like I told you before, the year before the Olympics, you qualified the boats for the for the Olympics, and we didn't qualify any boats. So what's next? And I thought that the quad that we raced in had potential, but then the federation said, no, we want to put everybody back in the 8. And stubborn as I am, I didn't want to comply right away. So I kept dragging my feet in the sand for a long time. And at a certain point, I was like, well, it's now 1104. So that is an Olympic year. You know, 03, okay. But having the 04, for me, that right away was, okay, it's an Olympic year. And so that's when I made the decision, okay, you know, all right, let's join the 8 selection. Not an easy road, because we had to go through all the qualification, national qualification, first of all, you know, boat selection. So I had to make the boat first. Then the national selection. Then we had to go through an international racing circuit where the NOC would say yes for us to go to the Olympic qualification regatta, which is the last resort. So that's typically 8 weeks before the Olympics. So you train the whole year as trying to think that we're going to the Olympics. And then you go to the regatta of death, because, you know,
no pressure.
Yeah, only out of, say, the 6 to 8 boats that enter, only 2 will pick up the last 2 tickets for the Olympics.
So you were one of the 2.
So we won that race, and we went to Athens. We first had our training camp in Munich, and the first day that we arrived, the guy who was typically sitting behind me, who also has the same medals as I do, he had a severe back injury, and he was not back in the boat until we got to Athens.
Oh my goodness.
And you could think like, well, that's indeed a disaster, and we thought about that as a disaster at the time. But we made the decision to have him not coming back at the seat that he usually rows in, but put him all the way in the bow seat. And we had a conversation after one of the first practices that he was back, and he said, we have to step up our game, because in the way that we row right now, we're not going to do well. And so he started coaching from the bow.
Wow.
And I started to coach a little bit, say, from the position that I was in. And we got to the final, and I knew how I had to row that final, because again, the US was in the lane next to us, and they were very favored to win the gold. And in the way that I row is that I turn left, and I had the US crew next on my right hand side, and they are fast starters and we are not. So I knew that in a couple hundred meters they would pull out, and that I wouldn't see them again. And then you have in your mind that, like, oh, we're behind and we're never going to make it. And
it's hard to catch up. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, the mental game is the physical game is what you trained for 4 years for.
Yeah.
But the mental game comes down to, in our case, to 5 minutes and 40 of racing, and
But you did it.
So we had the best race. We had the best race of the season, and that's the funny thing about the Olympics is that certain crews step up. So like we did, and you have crews who completely don't live up to their expectations.
So let's see the medal you got.
So then I walked away with this one.
Yay!
It's funny though, because if I put them all next together, is that like you can see that they over the years they have become smaller.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah, because the one from Atlanta is bigger. You can see that.
That's because Americans, we supersize everything.
Yeah. So the Atlanta one is bigger than the one from Sydney, and
wow.
The one from Athens is smaller than the one from. But
that's fascinating.
But it doesn't matter, It's just a funny thing.
Now I remember. I know I want to get to questions, but I remember when we spoke, when I interviewed you for the book, for The Success Factor. You told me that after that race was over, your third Olympics, with your crew, you went to hang up your boat, and that's when you just knew. You just knew that was it. I'm done.
Yeah, it was. It was a rough year. I had, say, a rough 2003, and then a lot of like stress going into 2004 with the qualifying. Even though we had a great team, a lot of fun. But I was, and there are plenty of pictures of it. But I was crying like a baby at the grandstand. Or during the medal ceremony, and
yeah, you're talking about those pictures, but what people don't realize, and I know Bruce and Suzie want to ask some questions, and I have one from Debbie. When I was writing the articles during the Olympics for Forbes and Psychology Today, Michiel was my go-to person for the inside scoop on the Olympics when I was trying to figure out what's it like, in the Olympic Village, and then he sends me these photos. I mean, can you imagine being an Olympian, having, these insider track to document everything, when he went to the palace in the Netherlands, what it was like in the dining hall, what the Olympic Village was like. Now, for you, you've been there 3 times. It's no big deal. But for the rest of us who haven't been there, having that view, that very unique view that you had. Well, it's a big deal.
It's still a big deal. But when we rowed back and we took the boat out of the water and we put it in the slings, as we call it, to put it down, right? And it's from overhead to like down. I just felt, say, from like the fingertips down to the ground, just just serene. I was, when I put that down, I knew that I was like done.
You gave it your all. That's what every Olympian tells me. You know that.
And then the following year, I was a coach, professional coach, and went to qualify the crew for the World Championships, and I was there. And so a lot of people that I raced the year before, they saw me on my bike, and they were like, "Oh, don't you want to be in the boat?" And I said, "Nope, I've done that.
Been there, done that."
Yeah, no, and even now, I'm still like very competitive, but I don't have the desire or the urge as I had it. It's very interesting to have that, but to experience it all, to go to meet the Queen or the Prime Minister, to go to the Royal Palace, to have your own version of a ticker tape parade.
Can you imagine, Bruce?
Can
you imagine that?
To the people who watched the television and cheered for you on from the television set. to
Wow.
show them your medal, and it's that then you realize, say it's quite special what you have done.
It definitely is, and it's interesting that you're now coaching, which I see is very common with many of the Olympians, and in fact, something like half the Nobel Prize winners were trained by other Prize winners, and, Debbie, during the pre-show, asked a question, did, because now you're coaching, and you're coaching at Temple, and before that, you coached at Harvard, and you've coached at other places. Have any of your former students gone on to become Olympic rowers?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. How's
Yeah.
that feel to be on the other side of that?
Beautiful. Like there's an if you coach rowers or any athlete, if you're a coach and you see your athletes performing, um, not necessarily to be an Olympian, but in the way that you want them to, if you think that they're reaching what you see in them,
Yeah,
um, that's the whole reason why I coach. There's
love that.
such a great feel. I coached a guy. So when I stopped rowing in '04, I came to the US in '05 to start coaching in Philadelphia at a great rowing club, Vesper Boat Club, on Boathouse Row. And I had to coach rowers who desired the same thing as I once did, to become a national team member and to go to the World Championships and eventually try to make it to the Olympic Games.
Wow.
So in my first year there was a rower who had a dual citizenship, U.S. and Canada, but he chose to compete for Canada, and he was coming out of college, did a graduate study, started to train with me, and made such huge improvements that the Canadian national team coach said, like, I would like to have you come up to Canada.
Wow.
So at a certain point when he could, he went to Canada, back to Canada, and started training with the national team. And a year later, he became Olympic champion in the eights.
Wow.
And he continued to row for another 4 years and won the silver medal at the London Olympic Games 2012. And I think within half a year, I received a letter from the Canada Rowing Federation that my rower indicated that I was his most influential person, that
Wow.
had, say, giving him the opportunity to get to where he was. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, I know Debbie Heiser is gonna wanna talk to you later about your legacy tree. I can already see that conversation brewing. Bruce, do you have a question for Michiel?
Yeah, great story. Great to hear. Again, there aren't too many people who have even one Olympic medal. You've got multiple ones.
The fact that he can compare the sizes, I mean, can you
Oh
imagine?
yeah, yes. Most of us, in order to have medals, we actually have to like make them up and stick them
Participate
to
in
our
something.
jacket and claim that we won something. But when I think of rowing, I remember someone I know. She started off, fairly quiet, not as much confidence, and eventually like became a rower and became a very successful one.
Mhm.
And like after a while, like eventually, like she was doing push-ups in the cafeteria on the table, like, and she became very like it really brought out the whole personality. I think it changed her life.
Yeah.
Becoming a successful rower. And I've seen many stories, and it also like it helps people. It seems to have helped a lot of people, become successful in other areas after they're finished their rowing career.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us about sort of the life skills that you gain and really own from being a rower? Like, what are some of these qualities that you can really gain from participating in the sport?
Well, I think that you already gave one big one away, is the confidence. Is that the progression. Rowing is a sport. It doesn't. You can learn it later in life. There are plenty of rowers who start out in college and make the Olympic team by just sheer hard work. And of course, when you start, you doubt yourself, but you see that you're getting better. You see that, like, you start to not necessarily win races, but you start to race better. And if I think back about certain things that after I stopped rowing, where I feel like it's tough, but then I think that just back about the confidence that I had to row an Olympic final. Even then, I didn't know the outcome, but being there at the start, knowing that I did everything possible, to prepare myself for that race, gave such a rest. And so I think back about those days, those moments. Other thing is time management, because if you train 3 times a day, and so some rowers are not professional. They have a job next to it. So they practice early in the morning, and they practice when they come back, from work, and they practice again at 6 p.m.
That's a lot.
But just to really devote your time to a sport where there's no money, no contracts, you just do it because you love it. So I think the time management, but also the ability to give it your all to something that you're super passionate about, is I think also something that really triggers now to what I try to teach my rowers, is like, do something that you love.
That's element number 1 that all high achievers do.
Yeah,
they find it.
You have to find a way, something that you, because I didn't know when I started rowing. I had no thoughts even to become an Olympic rower, and I was more bad than I was good.
Well, at the beginning. Well, that I know that Suzie wants to ask a question that actually touches on that point. Suzie, you're muted, Suzie.
Sorry. I'm really amazed
Getting
by
into
your...
another dimension, it looks like.
I know. She's a little blurry. But go ahead. We can hear you, Suzie. We can hear you.
I will be in focus. There we go.
There we go.
Speaking of ups and downs, I was really struck by your story. And I know that photographers and everyone really has ups and downs in their careers. A photographer goes out and tries to get a picture, and they get a jillion ones that don't work, and then they get the one that is right on the money. And I'm always interested in people such as yourself. How do you get past those tough times? What kind of resilience do you have? Do you have imagery? Do you have self-talk? What tools do you have that helps you get past those tough times?
How do you get out of a funk?
Good question. Because I think it's very personal. In my case, and I think that goes maybe a little bit back also to when I was not being selected for the junior national team, was I want to show people that I'm capable of doing this. I'm not necessarily thinking like, oh, I have to prove this person or that person that I can do it, but I just didn't want to give up. I didn't want to walk away, and it's hard because I had that year where I was selected out so many times, and if I didn't have also persons to talk to, to either put it in perspective or just listen, I don't know if I was able to continue. But the main reason for me was to challenge myself and show where I could take it. And that drive was getting bigger and bigger, because I was also in the right environment. If I think back about, the timeline, right? If I didn't do my military service before college, but after college, because it was mandatory, so I had to do it at a certain point anyways, I would have probably ended up in a different training group, which was probably then not going to be as challenging as the one that I stepped in after my military service. So it is also the environment, meeting the right people. But for me personally, it was just, I'm not a quitter. That's basically what it comes down to. And there are definitely times where I thought, okay, that's it, I'm done. We had fights, we had disagreements, we had, that were not on the same page a lot of times, which was for maybe somebody else enough reason to say, okay, I'm done. But for me, it was, okay, I've put a lot of things again in perspective, gave it a lot of thought, and said to myself, well, this is not the way I want to end it. And I just kept going.
Michiel, you have an incredible story, and those 3 Olympic medals and all the other accolades that you had are extremely well earned. I don't care that they were smaller after the Atlanta Games. Again, that's just because Americans supersize everything. Those were extremely well earned, and I'm happy that you left competing in the water on your terms. And now you are coaching the next generation of rowers on your terms. I am so thrilled that we got to meet and that we got to chat and that Debbie Heiser connected us. And I was really honored to share your story in the book, The Success Factor. And there's a bunch of articles, there's some in the chat, where parts of your story and many of your pictures appear. And I'm sure there'll be more later on. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your story with us. For everyone who's listening, the audio will also appear as a podcast in another week or so. An incredible story of an incredible guy, Michiel Bartman, 3-time Olympian and Olympic champion. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.